Don't touch that dial, everyone. My name is Ella, and it is Friday, and that means it is time for another Wandavision episode discussion. Now, before we get started, as always, we are going to be touching upon spoilers in this episode, so if you haven't watched episode 4 of WandaVision yet, go do that first and then click back on this video. Otherwise, you've been warned. So, episode 4 of WandaVision came out this morning, and it was a doozy of an episode. A lot of things confirmed, a lot of questions still left unanswered. We're just going to talk through the episode from beginning to end and talk about theories and questions that are still up for debate at the end of the episode. So the beginning of this episode actually starts with the snap reversing, which is something that we have not seen yet. The closest we got was in Spider-Man Far From Home, where we saw people getting dusted back from the blip, but we've never really seen the immediate aftermath of what happened. So I thought that was really cool that we got to see this in this episode, and I think it was really cool that we're getting to follow Monica Rambeau, because I think she's going to be a very important character in future episodes of WandaVision, but I also think she's also going to be an important character in future Marvel movies as well. We also get a little bit of backstory about Monica Rambeau in the sense that we find out that her mother, Maria Rambeau, is dead, unfortunately, and I'm wondering if that might not have an effect on Captain Marvel 2. I feel like they kind of threw that in there just so we'd know, but then also to kind of, allude to that might be important in the future, in future movies like Captain Marvel 2. So I thought that was interesting that they threw that in as well. Also from there we go straight into the Marvel Studios intro, which I've noticed is still black and white. The characters are still black and white when it goes through the different characters in the Marvel Studios logo. So I thought that was something that would stop once the episode started airing in color, but they were still like that in the last episode, and they're still like that this episode. So I'm wondering if this might not be just a WandaVision thing, but it might be a thing to, kind of signify that we're moving on from the past, like the original 6 Avengers, like that we're going into new territory, and them being in black and white is kind of like a homage to the Marvel Avengers that we used to know and love. So from the Marvel Studios logo intro, we go to SWORD headquarters, and there is where we meet Tyler Hayward. I did not personally recognize the name. I might have to do a little bit more research to see if he's someone that has been in any of the Marvel movies before, or if he's more of a comic book character that they have introduced through WandaVision. We also find out that the blip is the actual name that everyone is universally calling Thanos' snap. I know they called it the blip also in Spider-Man Far From Home, but I wasn't sure if that was just kind of slang that those certain characters were calling it, or if it was more of a universal thing. And after this episode of WandaVision, I'm thinking that the blip was definitely more of a universal name given to the snap, so that everyone had a name for it that wasn't, Thanos snapped his fingers, because obviously not everyone is going to know who Thanos is, so it would make sense that they would have a name that has nothing to do with snapping or Thanos or even extraterrestrials to call this terrible event that happened to the world. There was also a kind of other sneaky, perhaps, little reference to Captain Marvel when Monica Rambeau mentioned that space was full of threats and allies. Obviously by allies she means Captain Marvel, because she grew up with Carol Danvers, so to speak, except for that, weird time where she wasn't there because she was in space, doing space thingies. So I thought that line was interesting, and I thought it was a great reference to Captain Marvel, so that now gives us 2 different insinuations that this might eventually tie into Captain Marvel in some way, form, or fashion, besides just having Monica Rambeau being in both WandaVision and Cap Marv 2. Now, they do mention the imaging drone right now, but I'm going to address it a little bit later because it comes into a bit more of a play later in the episode. But I knew that was going to be important, because otherwise why would they have mentioned specifically an imaging drone? But from there we learn that Monica Rambeau has been grounded. She is only on Earth duties, no more space duties, because her mom wanted it that way. And we find out that she is actually headed to New Jersey for a missing persons case. Now, originally I thought for some reason that this might be Wanda, but obviously once we get to actual New Jersey and to Westview, we find out that that is not the case, and things just kind of get even more strange from there. We find out that there is no Westview, even though there's a sign right next to these cops that say that there's no Westview that says Westview. So now we're left wondering, is Westview entirely made up, or are these people just not understanding that Westview does actually exist? There's, even after the end of this episode, I'm still not entirely sure how that works, like how they don't understand that Westview is real. I'm hoping that's something that might be addressed in further episodes. This moment is also where we are introduced to James, or Jimmy Woo, who you will recognize and remember from Ant-Man and the Wasp. He was in charge of making sure that Scott Lang didn't break his house arrest and whatnot, and he's working with the FBI on this missing persons case. And so now he and Monica Rambeau are working together to try and figure out what's going on, because they both kind of realize that this is not something that is normal. He makes it very clear that this is obviously something that has to do with, you know, superpowers or superheroes in some way. And he specifically mentions that it doesn't want him to go into Westview. And I thought that was interesting, because as we see right after that, Monica Rambeau goes into Westview without any problem whatsoever. So I'm wondering if there might be some kind of a secondary barrier. I'm not sure if Monica Rambeau in the comics has like superhero powers. Please don't come for me, I haven't read a lot of the comics, but if she does, I think it might make more sense that she would actually be able to go through the barrier into Westview, and James Woo wouldn't, because he's not a superpowered person. He doesn't have any powers or anything like that. So that's just kind of food for thought, something that might be completely and totally wrong, but just something that I thought about while I was watching the episode. This scene is where we also see the drone again. We actually see the actual drone go into Westview and disappear, and I thought it was interesting. As soon as it showed the drone, I was like, oh, that's definitely what Wanda sees in Westview, and that is later confirmed when they show James Woo looking at a picture from an episode currently happening, and it is in fact the toy helicopter that Wanda finds that is colorized within the black and white realm of Westview. This episode also brings us Darcy Lewis, or as we have now come to find out, Dr. Darcy Lewis, which, if I can just be proud for a moment, I have always liked Darcy Lewis as a character, and I think it's really cool that she's come back, and I think it's awesome that she's like actually fully gone from like intern to slightly more invested intern to now full-on doctor working for SWORD. I think that's really cool, and I hope we see her in other Marvel projects in the future, because I think she's going to be such a great character in this show, and I think she's just one of those characters that has such a dry sense of humor that never fails to make me laugh. She's perfect, and I love this. And this episode, she was so amazing in. Side note, I hope she gets her coffee or we're rioting, because the girl deserves some coffee after this episode. So they bring in Darcy Lewis to go through this thing to kind of find out what exactly is going on with Westview. By now they know that there's that barrier there, and they know that their drones keep disappearing in there, but they're not getting any readings or anything. So as an astrophysicist, Darcy is brought in to kind of see if there's something else that they're not quite getting that she might be able to get. And what Darcy finds is in fact something that I have never heard of. I'm not sure if this is an actual thing or if it's something that is made up in the MCU, but she mentions that what's happening in Westview is because of CMBR, or cosmic microwave background radiation. I feel like that is something important. Otherwise, they wouldn't have brought it up twice in this episode. I'm wondering if that might not be something important in either future episodes or maybe other movies in the future, if that might have something to do with the Multiverse of Madness with Doctor Strange or with Spider-Man 3. There's a lot of possibilities that could stem from these waves, so I'm interested to see if that is brought up again in the future or if this was just kind of a throwaway explanation for how Westview exists. In this episode, we also find out about the character Franklin, who is the beekeeper that we saw in episode 2 of WandaVision. We don't really know anything about him. I don't even think they mentioned him before he walked out in the suit, just that his name was Franklin. So I'm not sure if he's important past being the person that they try to send into Westview, or if he's just kind of there. And it's also kind of weird because they kind of just don't mention him again. Like, they show him again going through the Westview barrier, and then Wanda sees him, and then she rewinds it and nothing. We don't see what happens to Franklin. We don't know what happens. So did he just cease to exist? Is he still in Westview? We don't know. Hexagons are brought up again several times in this episode. We see them looking at a hexagonal shape, which I'm starting to think might be the shape of this Westview area that has been created or that has been taken over. But I'm still not entirely sure why it would be a hexagon. The only thing I can think of that might have any kind of actual oomph as a theory is that it has something to do with the Infinity Stones, because there are 6 Infinity Stones and hexagons have 6 sides. So I'm not really sure about the hexagons, and apparently neither are any of the characters in the show, because we do see this board of all these different notes and everything that they're taking down, and there are several questions that are posed up on the board, like why hexagons, is Vision dead, stuff like that. So it's kind of funny because the characters are just as in the dark as we are, but I also feel like that's Marvel poking fun at us, because this whole time we've been like, why the hexagons? I thought Vision was dead. And it's just kind of very they know we're theorizing, so it's really fun, and I love moments like that can kind of poke fun at the fandom without being mean about it. It's just kind of yeah, we're doing the same thing. We're also trying to figure out what the heck is going on in Westview. Now, the other board that we see is also a compilation of all of the different characters that are in Westview, and it is their actual human counterparts, because as we find out, these are in fact real people that are inside Westview, but they are playing different characters in WandaVision. We see the couple that are playing Mr. and Mrs. Hart, the different people that are playing all the different characters. What's interesting though is that we do not see Agnes on the board at all, which could mean one of a few things. It could mean that they just haven't found her yet. It could mean that they don't have any information on her at all, even in any kind of database online or social media or anything like that they would be using, driver's license databases, anything like that. Or alternatively, she's not from Earth. Could she actually be Agatha Harkness, like everyone is suggesting she might be? Could it be that she has been created by Wanda herself? We don't know. Lots of different things that could be happening. I'm excited to see where that goes. Something else that happened several times in this episode that I also found myself thinking about a lot is that every time in the previous episodes where Wanda either rewound or she skipped back to kind of change what was going on and to kind of stop any discussion about what was actually might be happening in Westview, when they're watching those episodes back, like it just like there's nothing, there's no hint, there's not even like any kind of indication that something went wrong. It just kind of like changes. And I thought that was interesting because us as viewers watching the show, you know, we've seen when Wanda has rewound or when the show has like skipped back or like froze or something like that. But that doesn't happen like in universe. So I'm wondering what's up with that. Like obviously it only happens when something like bad happens to Wanda, but like why would there be no hint of it in these episodes? Like, is she keeping that much of a track of, you know, what she's wanting people to see, assuming people are watching the show, that she can kind of control what they're seeing? Which obviously this whole thing is about control, because as we learn in this episode, Wanda is in fact the one who is doing all of this. She has created this kind of, for lack of a better term for right now, alternate reality where she has kind of maybe kidnapped, maybe entranced these people to play these characters in this little sitcom so that she can kind of have her own happy ending without having to really think about what actually has happened. And so they've made it very clear that Wanda thinks that she is in control of what is happening. And that could be the case. She could have actually be the one that's behind all of this stuff. But at the same time, in episode 3, we saw where she was doing stuff with her powers that she couldn't control. So I think that begs the question, is Wanda actually in control like she thinks she is? Or is she under the impression that she's got control over everything when really she's a puppet underneath someone else? Maybe Agatha Harkness, maybe Hydra, I don't know. I think that there are a lot of possibilities, and I think we could see, honestly, I feel like this could go any way at this point. I feel like they could be setting up Wanda to be a villain in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. I feel like they've given us enough hints that they could actually have Agnes be Agatha Harkness and it would work out and she could be the one controlling Wanda. I think there's just so many questions right now that we just don't have the answers to yet. And so I'm really excited to see how the show continues to play out. I know for a fact I was not expecting a full Outside of Westview episode this week. I thought at most it would maybe be like half and half. I figured we were at least going to get some part in Westview, and I guess we kind of did at the very end, because we did see it switch back from, you know, the widescreen current MCU reality, and then it switched back to the little, you know, boxy Westview alternate reality at the end. But I really wasn't expecting this at all. I expected a lot more actual like Wandavision in this episode. So I thought it was interesting that they chose this episode to kind of be the one to be completely outside of Westview. But yeah, so a lot of theories were confirmed in this episode. We did find out that that was Jimmy Woo speaking over the radio. We found out that it was a member of SWORD that was the beekeeper. We did find out that all of these noises that Wanda was hearing was in fact people from SWORD trying to get in. And we possibly found out that Wanda is the one that is actually creating this Westview reality. But even so, we still have a bunch of questions that are not answered. Like, you know, why is Wanda doing this? Why is she not wanting anyone else to find out? What has she done with these people? Who are these people? Do they mean anything to her? Just so many questions. I do think that her illusion is slipping a little bit. If you noticed at the end of the episode, Vision seemed very confused and a little alarmed at what had happened regarding Geraldine in Westview, and I think things are gonna continue to just keep getting like more and more serious from here. I know I mentioned in my video last week that I thought that we were definitely going to have a shift from comedic and kind of funny, haha, cutesy stuff into a more serious show going from episode 3 to episode 4, and I think that definitely happened, and I think that that's something that's going to continue throughout these episodes. I know we do still have some footage from trailers and stuff that are like the WandaVision episodes in the 80s. There's the Halloween episode, which I think might also be the 80s as well. So we obviously have more stuff that is going to be set in the actual Westview reality. But I am really interested to see where the show goes from here. Alright, that'll do it for this episode. If you have as many questions as I did about this episode and you just kind of want to talk about them, leave them down below in those comments. I will be lurking once this video posts to see if anyone has anything to say or anything that they want to theorize about. Stuff like that. If you watch my regular videos, I will see you on Wednesday. If not, I will see you next Friday for the discussion about WandaVision episode 5. Thank you all so much for tuning in, for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on notifications if you would like to. Like this video, all that good stuff. I will see you all in the next video. Bye.